All right, so today will be the final day of the extended sessions, and I look forward to having participants be able to use and to practice what they learned over the past two sessions, especially um, for the consignments, the deliveries section, and the packages section. So before we get started, I'll do my rudimentary mic check. I'll call the agency and you just indicate that you are from your agency and you are present. So I'm going to start off with the Hub Roman Catholic Church.
Good morning, Rufina here. I'm not sure if Shara is on, I can't see.
Okay, thank you. Next, the Rotary Clubs of Barbados. Okay, the Optimist Clubs. All right, Lions and Leo Club. Okay, the Anglican Church. Okay, the Seventh-day Adventist Church.
Present.
Okay. Up next, we have the Barbados Association of Non-Governmental Organizations.
And Harding present. Are you there,
Right.
Marsha?
Okay, great. Barbados Red Cross Society. Red Cross, anyone there today? Okay, the Salvation Army.
Good morning, John Ferguson, Rugby Salvation Army.
Right. Coming. DEM, Department of Emergency Management.
Kevin Rashid is on. I don't think he's not able to use his mic, I don't think.
Okay.
He's there.
All right. Barbados Defense Force, BDF. Okay. Ministry of People Empowerment and Elder Affairs. Up next, Ministry of Education, Technological and Vocational Training.
I will say Ministry of People Empowerment, they are on. And I received a message from the Ministry of Education. They have a meeting. So they hope to join once that is finished.
Okay, great. And your presence will confirm the Ministry of Labor. So
Yes.
all right. Okay, that's done. So we move on with the agenda and to agenda item 2, which is a practical and exercise session. Now, this is where we will learn to approve the SRFs, they deal with consignments, process packages, and delivery. So essentially, it will build on what we learned. Okay, I see BDF is present. Yeah. Sergeant Greenwich, fantastic. So I see that we have, and we will build on what we did in the last practical, which was the upload of stock. So what I will do, I will hand the reins over to my colleagues at WFP to help facilitate this practical exercise session. So the floor is yours, WFP. Proceed.
Yes, good morning all to the ultimate session of this part of the training. Good to see you all back. Hope everyone's kind of ready to get stuck in. So today will be more of a guided session, much the same as the one we did at the end of the last course. We will revisit that and we will carry it through the process that Kevin has showed you over the last couple of days. What you'll find is that in the system that we're working in, the training environment, your permissions have all been elevated. And we've moved the stock import back down to the operator level, which it always used to be at, but we found that we needed to shift it back to administration level in an emergency. The difference is in that emergency, you've got very inexperienced users, but yourselves have all had the benefit of some 4 weeks or 2 weeks of familiarization now. So that's the difference, is that typically a lot of the roles or a lot of the tasks that are presented in this course would be done by people with operator level permissions, including the approvals. But as I say, we had to shift that in the last emergency, just because if there are inexperienced users, then as you have seen from the exercise we did last time, it's very, very easy to corrupt the database with entries that are made. They're not really errors, they're just inexperience more than anything. So anyway, it's a long-winded way of saying that you should all have access to the training environment now. So you should be able to carry through the process from start to finish, which is what we're going to go through. So let me just share my screen to start with, and we'll do a little bit of admin first. So this is the library and the training environment. If you're already logged in, you'll be able to find the training exercises here. It's this file, 7 December, practical exercises. But before we start that, for anyone who would like to follow along on an Android device, we have an APK in here, which is an app file, which can be downloaded and installed on your Android device, just as you would any other application. And then you can open that and log in, and you'll be able to use that for the ultimate exercises in this part of the training. If you don't have an Android device, or you don't have the capacity at the moment to download and install it, don't worry, you can do that at a later time, and it won't in any way stop you engaging in the training, because the system, as we've tried to sort of emphasize along the way, the system is designed to degrade gracefully. So if you have the tech toys, that's fantastic. If you don't, then the traditional means of a web browser or even paper are still quite valid. So with that said, this is what we are going to do. So that's the prequel that I was just talking about before. If you want to download it and install it, fine. If you can't, then as I say, fine again. So the first exercise that we're going to do, and the way we're going to approach this is we're going to look at it from some typical use cases that you yourselves would have. So what we want to do first up is to get some stock into the system that you can then use to manipulate and to follow through and approve right to the end. So the first thing I'll ask you to do is to download a stock import template, which you know by now that you can find on the stock window, and to make some entries into that. So what I'm suggesting that you do is you pick some sort of item that you would typically move around that is a capital asset. In other words, it's not going to be consumed, and it has the possibility of being moved back and forth from A to B to C to D to E many times. It has a long life and it has a high value, so you might want to trace it. And as we discussed previously, there is no capacity inside the phase 1 for recording serial numbers. So the way we get around that is we put the serial number directly into the description box. So that's one item. And the other things that we'll look at are items that you would typically move around, whether it's food items, or maybe it's hygiene products, or maybe it's baby care products, those kind of things. The sort of stuff that you might move typically, and the sort of stuff you might perhaps put in a kit. I wouldn't worry too much about units of measure. Again, you can apply whatever heuristics you think are reasonable. And then what we will do at the end of that is you can upload your SRF, and I mean, sorry, your it says SRF there, but it's actually your blank stock, your filled in stock template, and you'll be able to verify that you have actually managed the upload. Of course, I should point out, so it's just pointed out something to me, is the blank template is actually, if you have downloaded, I'm causing a bit of confusion here, the application doesn't support the blank template download and upload, primarily because the application is designed to use on relatively small screen devices. So it works on your typical smartphone and the tablets, and there's not really enough real estate there to make the process of filling in a template or an SRF a very pleasant experience. So we've left that out for the time being. But anyway, so let's go right ahead and pull down a template and fill it in, maybe 4 or 5 lines, and then you can put it back up. So the time is 9:22 now. Let's call that done at say about 9:35. And if anyone has questions, then by all means ask away, or put them in the chat. That's fine. Wow. That's great. No questions.
I have a question, Jeffrey.
Oh, yep,
Sorry to
shoot.
back
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering if we could just talk a little bit about where you said the 2 to 4 kit items with at least 25 of each. I just wondering, because I thoroughly appreciate what you're saying about the data that's uploaded. You know, if you're not careful, if you don't do it properly or in a good way, then it is very difficult to deal with further up the chain. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about the kit items and you know, just advice on maybe some examples and how that works. I was wondering about things like, okay, like for example, if you had a box of diapers, and that was just, you know, you're not going to break open that box and issue separate individual diapers, right? So you're going to ship that out to the destination, the final destination as a box of diapers, even if it's got 100 diapers in it, right?
Yes.
If you had a crate of, you know, 10 boxes of those boxes, then I can imagine you might, you know, enter it into the spreadsheet as, you know, the unit being a box of 10 diapers. You know what I mean? As
Yep.
opposed to one crate of 10 boxes of 10 diapers each. But with a kit, because I've never myself had the experience of putting together any kind of kit like this before, I was wondering if you could give some examples of the type of items that would go in a kit and something too further about the way that you deal with the units on that.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so typically when the needs assessment is done right up the front by the people on the ground, they will identify, it's typically family groups rather than individuals, but it can also be, it could go down to the individual level, or it might be vulnerable people or whatever. And then there are these metrics based on typically on what would be needed to sustain, say, a nuclear family of 4 for a period of 7 days or something like that. So there might be a bag of rice, a bag of beans, oil, salt, and other essential items. And then on top of that, there might be personal hygiene items like a UNICEF hygiene kit or the likes of that. And they would be based from a delivery to one location. So rather than force the end location, like a shelter, to try and figure all this stuff out on the ground and pack it, it's more useful, as I've sort of been trying to emphasize, to take the pain at the point where it is, there are the most resources. So a central warehouse normally has more staff, covered facilities, et cetera, and the ability to pick and pack. So what you would do, or what typically happens, is a bulk item is received into the warehouse, and then it's broken down into individual boxes, into kits. And those kits are then sent out as kits on a truck or a van or a delivery vehicle, or even a mule. And they go out there. And when they hit the distribution point, then they're already pre-packed as a family kit to sustain 4, or a family kit to sustain 8, or on and on, at as many levels as the original needs assessment team or the national government determine appropriate. And so the system is designed to facilitate that. And that's kind of why we sort of explain to you that the package is a fundamental and important part of this process, because the way you configure your package and the number of packages you put in kind of sets the stage for that. So if, for instance, you say your kit has the bag of rice, the bottle of oil, a packet of salt, and 10 cans of tuna and a packet of water, then you can bundle all of that into a kit and just label it as one kit. And you can then go ahead and keep going through that process as many times as you want. Or you could do the alternative, which is what you were sort of saying before, is you could just send out the whole pallet, and at the distribution point, they break it up into the kits. It kind of depends on how the organization chooses to approach it. But as I mentioned, the least pain method of doing it is to work from a central distribution point, or a central warehouse, actually, a hub, where there are a lot of staff and a lot of resources, and to bundle this stuff all up. To pre-kit it is kind of what I'm saying. Does that sort of explain more to you or help?
Yeah, and the more I learn, the more my mind gets boggled.
Well, yeah, and as you rightly pointed out, it causes a nightmare for us from a development side, because we have a many relationship going on. In fact, we have many relationships going on, which are a bit of a complex nightmare to resolve. But the actual benefits to the users of being able to go down to the package level outweigh the hassles of doing it. Because by doing that, we can assign a unique identifier, and that unique identifier is then track and traceable. And that's an important part of what goes on in the emergencies, because it's just so easy to lose track of where you are and who's been sent stuff, and whether it's actually arrived. If you've got an actual means of saying, yep, it's been received, it got scanned in at this point, we know it happened, we know the registered user was there, we're done. So that's really what it all comes down to. But anyway, I digress.
That's okay. So I know I'm going to regret hearing on the recording my stupid questions, but so in my example then, with the pallet of boxes of diapers, as opposed to, what would you recommend? Or do you have to sort of know where the final destination is going to be when you upload this stock? And do you have to have that in mind when you might be sending it off if you're sending it off overseas? Of course, you would just put it in as a whole pallet of boxes of diapers, because you just know you're going to plastic wrap that, put it on a ship, and send it like that, and not break it into individual boxes of 10 diapers. But if yeah, so it seems as though the person who's entering the stock almost needs to know where it's intended to be sent and how it's going to get there.
Well, actually, yes, that is true. And so we have the two scenarios. We have the perfect world, and then we have our world. And in a perfect world, this would all be pre-identified. You know, a government would have had the capacity to go around, and its statistical census information would be very accurate. The demographics would be known, the age groups, gender, disabilities, etc., etc., etc. They would know that this was a particularly vulnerable location. They would know what the buildings are made out of. They would know what the likely damage impact is going to be of a Cat 5 or a Cat 4 or a Cat 6 hurricane, or Cat 5, sorry. And so you would be able to say, right, well, we've got this many families in this particular parish. This is the percentage we think are going to be impacted. This is the time we think it will take for us to get a working resolution based on the number of people, the likelihood of impact, a percentage fudge factor, if you like. This is what we think we're going to need. And you could break it all up statistically using an algorithm on a computer, and that would be fantastic. And you would know you needed 100 4-person family kits, 50 6-person family kits, and maybe a couple of individual kits rather. The reality is that when the storm comes, it's chaos, and the perfect kit doesn't happen because a pallet of diapers turns up, and then a day later a pallet of water turns up, and a couple of days later the rice turns up. Well, there's no waiting around to see what happens. It's just what you've got, you fire out as fast as you can. So there is the capacity to live in the perfect world, and there is also the capacity to live in the real world. And as you say, the organization does need to have a bit of an idea of what they're going to receive in, what their purpose is with what they're procuring or acquiring, and how they are planning to distribute it. Again, the how to distribute it gets a little bit shaky when shelters are opening on an ad hoc basis. Well, not an ad hoc basis, but as one fills up, then another needs to be opened, etc., etc., etc. So there is quite a lot going on, and it does get quite hectic, and the hours get quite long, and people get very tired. So the easier you can make the system, the better it is. And so, yes, you would not break down a box of diapers. There's not really any point in doing that. And you wouldn't account for anything less than a box of diapers, which kind of goes back to what we were talking about with water. Are you better off to deal with one bottle of water or with a 6-pack of water? It's really up to the organization and how they want to account for it. But the more granular it is, yes, the more accurate it is, but also the more difficult it is to manage. I guess that's kind of it.
Thanks, Jeff. That helps a lot. And it has occurred to me lots of times during this training that during the chaotic times that the good lines of communication are really critical to try to make everything as efficient as you can be. I didn't know if you had anything you wanted to say about that, how that works, in your experience.
Sorry, I didn't quite follow what that is. The lines of communication. How?
So the people. With the supply chain, you've got people out there who are seeking donations and putting together piles of goods that they want to donate. Right. That's the beginning of it. Other people might be talking to the destination location to find out what's needed, and then need to tell the people who are collecting what's needed to be collected. So that's a couple of steps of communication there. And then when they've collected items, then somebody's got to have a way to get one of these spreadsheets filled out with what the items are. and then somebody's got to upload that. And in that part right there, then, you know, like you said, it can corrupt the data if it's not done well. So that would also need a lot of communication, I should think, or maybe the person uploading does a lot of corrections. I don't know. And from there on, I couldn't even speak to her because I can't imagine what all the warehouse manager has to do to communicate with everybody and know what all is, you know, what is what. But thanks.
Yeah, that is right. It is, if you like, it is the whole point of what we're doing now, is so that when next year the Cat 3 hurricane hits Barbados, everyone here is aware of how to react and what tools are available and what resources are available. To try and do training at the same time you're in a live operation is very difficult, and as you point out, full of the possibility for errors. It's time consuming trying to do two jobs at once, and it's highly stressful, as some of the others who've been involved with this in the actual states of emergency can tell you. Yes, it is important to have good lines of communication. It also helps if the organization has a clear direction on what they want to do. And the wild card is always, always, always unsolicited goods, because you cannot head off. It's a very difficult thing to deal with, is that you need help in an emergency and you're asking for help, but the quality of help is critical to the way that you manage the operation. If you just get a container full of random cans of food that may or may not be within usable life, if you get used shoes, if you get winter clothing sent to a tropical island, if you get ice trays sent to a tropical island where there's no power, I mean, you know, there are people who may be well-meaning, but managing those items and trying to separate them all out and figure out what's useful from what's not requires a huge effort in itself. So managing unsolicited goods is a whole different topic. The system does allow you to flexibly enter anything that you find that's useful, but it has no means of working with what's being segregated and put aside for destruction or for sale or whatever. And as I pointed out, well, I think I mentioned the other day, the Red Cross here still has items that they are looking to move that just kind of pitched up on the doorstep from well-meaning people, and that's fantastic. You know, you want that support, but how you manage it it's tricky. It is tricky for sure. And again, I digress. Sorry. Anyway, so I think that we are probably past our time. Has anyone had any issues with their import template, or have the majority managed to get it done?
Good morning, Jeff. Before you move on, I'm sending a chat from Sergeant Corey Greenwich.
Yeah.
He said he registered on the 1st, but he hasn't received the approval.
Yep.
All right. And then Marcia Brandon from Bangor, she has some issues, so she is not with us this morning. And I believe Anne Marcia will be registered under Bangor. Will Anne be able to go ahead and use the system? I'm not sure if Marcia is the main user, how the registration works. But would Anne be able to access everything that Marcia is able to access as a user?
If she has her credentials, she could. Otherwise, she could log in, create her own.
Okay. Okay, so that's for Anne, and then with Scholar Sergeant Renee, she said he hasn't received his approval.
Yeah, that's okay. I've asked one of the support crew to get in there and sort it out. I'm pretty sure that Jamal is already at operator level. It might even be admin level. But anyway, someone's checking on it now.
Okay, well, I will leave now the other participants to say how far they've gotten with the exercise. Let me get that. Thanks.
No problem. So just to rip through this at a great pace of knots, let's do one together. So the first task would have been to just get into this part, and you would have seen that you've got the download template and the upload stock buttons. So to download the template, it's as simple as just a download. I'll open it in my screen. Okay, so we will choose World Food Program. We'll choose our own. Go logistics, remembering of course that the drop down buttons are to the right. So what I'm going to choose is something that we don't normally carry, just so that I can highlight it. So let's go with a order. It's going to be each unit weight. It's about what, 6 tons, I think. Unit volume is going to be about 6 cubic meters. Unit price is going to be about 150,000. Go for one. It's going to be available. And there we go. So that kind of, I hope that kind of gives you an idea of how quick it is to do an entry if we're just applying heuristics. If you want to go into the nuts and bolts, but yeah, sure, it's going to get a little more complicated. For the purposes of this, we'll just all right. So the unit weight is going to be unit volume. It's the volume of rice, JP. Must be about 0.02, I guess. Price is going to be, let's call it $10. Quantity, right? So this is where I'm going to put in. Oops. Don't need 1,000. Make that available, and I'll add one more just so that you can see what's going on. That should of course be food security, right? Let's make it oil. Let's go. I don't really need to put the units of measure in the description, but it's just to make it a little unique. So it's It's probably going to be 5. Let's make it 100 of those as well. I'll add one more and then we'll call it quits there. I don't know. I don't want to. So you notice here that I've got pounds in there, but I'm not going to record it as pounds. So a pound is what, half a kilo, right? Near enough. So again, applying a heuristic, that's what I'm going for, just in the interest of being quick and it not really affecting what I'm trying to do. I don't know, it's probably 0.1. Let's say it's $2 each, and let's say we've got 100 of those again, just to keep things simple. All right, so there's my my upload. I don't even need to worry about date. I've got it set on metric. Everything's metric. So I'm just going to save that. And then I will jump back into CLS. So this time what I'm going to do is, and you can do as well, is I'm going to upload that. Okay, so if I wanted to verify that, then I can just go and have a look at the warehouse that I'm dealing with. And maybe I'm going to go and have a check on my Caterpillar, see if it's there. If all is good, what was it, a loader, right? Okay, so I can see that my load is there. So all is good. I'm happy. So now I have items that I can start pushing around. Okay, so if you have completed step 1 successfully, then you will have managed to upload items into your warehouse that you can now go into the next process. So is everyone on net with where we've got to so far? Any issues? Okay, so this is being recorded. You'll be able to follow this later. And of course, keep in mind always that you've got help right at your fingertips showing you what's there and how it can be used, and what basically leading you step by step through what you need to do to complete each step. It explains the stock categories. Here's explaining how the template's used, any warnings, and sort of there is some help for people who are not so familiar with it as well. And then again, of course, if you need to, you can always call Kevin or reach out to Kevin or ourselves, or in fact, even amongst your own group, there will be very shortly a well-trained group who are capable of advising on this. So the idea is that there are multiple layers who can help you down the path.
Jeff?
Yep.
Oh, I was seeing Chanel's hand up with a query, and I'm not sure if Anne's hand is still up from before or if she has a query. And then Sharon was saying, we have a couple messages in the chat. Let me see, Sharon Kamabat, she says she does not have the drop-down menu. And Margaret Holder, right, it's saying basically the same thing. Cell file does not have the drop-down selection menu. We have input into the info directly. You have to input the info directly.
I'm not sure what that means, but
If they can, if Margaret, if you can raise that.
so some fields.
I think it might be an easy mistake to make because I've done it many times in the spreadsheet. The column heading has a drop-down button on it, but that's for filtering.
Correct.
And And if you click on the cell, the empty cell, another button pops up beside the cell. And if you click on that, then you'll get your drop-down list.
That's correct.
Might be a
So
problem.
there are a couple of things going on there. Yes. So these top arrows are filters, and this is an Excel feature. This is not a system feature. So this is kind of why we sort of emphasize that Excel is a fundamental part of logistics anywhere really. Well, not necessarily Excel these days, but understanding spreadsheets is a fundamental part of managing supply chain, and an ERP just takes that to another level. Now, the reason we've gone for this is because you can see how easy it was to make those entries. It is not that easy to make those entries in any kind of relational database. You have to understand what you're doing, and if you're going to make direct entries, then you need to know a system language called SQL, which is not user-friendly if you haven't had some experience with it. So this is why we go with the familiar tools. So this is an Excel table, and in an Excel table, if you want to find the drop-down menu, you go to the right of the table, and then you get all of the items that are available to you. Now, if you're saying that some fields don't have units of measure, that's absolutely correct. So there is no drop-down for item description. The item description depends on what you are trying to move. So these are control fields which do have drop-down menus, simply because there is a limited number of sectors and there is a limited number of agencies and facilities. But what you put in the item description is entirely up to you. And that's what we've been emphasizing, is that these fields are user controllable. And because they're user controllable, they give you great flexibility, and the flip side of that sword is they give you great possibility to make errors. So as operators, which is what you guys are all listed at, well, guys and girls are all listed as now, then you have the ability to make command decisions that would not be available to ordinary users. And that's the caveat. And as I pointed out earlier, is that we had to even push that higher to administrator, because in an emergency we found that we were just getting too many errors, and that the retroactive cleanup was just too time consuming for the resources we had on the ground. So typically this would be an operator responsibility, and we would expect those operators to be well trained, as you guys are going through the training, and girls are going through the training now. So I hope that sort of clears up anything about the drop-down menus.
Thanks, Jeff. Chanel has her hand up, so she can go ahead. Chanel, you can go ahead with your question to Jeff.
Thank you, Ms. Riley. I tried uploading, but I think I'm missing a step, because I would have tried to use an item that has a serial number. So from row 19, I would have tried to capture a serial number, obviously fictitious serial number. But when I uploaded it, it says that it has no owner agency selected at the row where I know my serial numbers would have started. So I just need to get some clarity on how to add an item with a serial number that it won't cause an error.
So you have to enter an owner agency here. So before you start at the left, pick the agency that is going to be the owner of that item, then go across to where that item is going to be, pick a sector, and then start loading your item. So for instance, if I was going to add, say I'm going to add a forklift, then I would choose who my owner is going to be. So that entry is now complete. Then I move on to the next one. I choose where it's going to be. Move on to the next one. And then I would go I don't know. Then again, I choose each. Again, I'm taking a wild stab in the dark, but it's a 10-ton forklift, so it's a fair bet that it's going to be somewhere around 12 tons. That big, so I'm going to put about 6 cubic meters. And the price for one of those, heuristic rule of thumb, is going to run somewhere around 60,000. And I'm only going to have one because, of course, if it's got a serial number, you can only have one. I'm going to make that available and I'm done. On to the next row. Now, the other thing is, before you do an upload, you have to remember to save it. Otherwise, it will just upload what was there previously without your saved work.
So my question, Jeff, is if it wasn't a forklift, let's say it was, say chainsaws, they carry a serial number and a quantity of, let's say 5.
Yep.
How would you, so you would put an individual line item, just like what you have here. Ah, I see.
Or whatever the
That's-
serial numbers are. And then I would go back and fill all these fields in. You have to have all of these fields, of course. You can't just do this. You need to fill in the remaining items. So.
You.
And so on.
Help. I'm
No.
stuck in the select stock box, and I think I must have picked the wrong warehouse because it's only one thing I should have been more careful with what warehouse, but I can't get out of the select stock box.
Sorry, Anne, say again.
I don't want any of what's in that select stock list. I need to go back and change the warehouse because I put that in wrong. Otherwise, I won't find my things that I successfully uploaded, by the way.
Select stock. Oh, so you're in the actual interface.
Yeah, I'm in the select stock box, and once you click on select stock, it's like you're stuck in that box. You can't get out without picking something from there. I guess
I don't follow you. What's the select stock?
Oh, when you're doing an SRF, weren't we supposed to do it?
Oh, I see. Right. Oh, okay. Sorry, you're way ahead of us. So I'm still dealing with this.
Sort of blindly, I silly me, I just sort of blindly picked the warehouse off the list without thinking, well, what did I put on mine that I uploaded?
So I suspect that it might be because the stock box is taking up all of your window. Are you able to scroll down, and there should be a button at the bottom to close it, or right up in the top right corner?
I see the button that says OK.
Yeah, if you click OK, it'll just get you out of there.
But if I don't pick anything, it says error message. Please enter all required fields. It wants me to pick something from that list. I guess I can go ahead and just take the one roll of duct tape that's listed there.
Yeah, you could try that, and
then delete it.
yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So I'm just fielding another question here. When I try to upload the stock template, it says non-numeric value encountered. So that means that in one of the fields you have, it seems that you probably have put something in that's, did you try to enter something manually into one of these fields? That would be at Sharon. I don't know, but take a while.
The only thing I entered manually would be the estimated price.
Okay, so how did you, I'm not sure how you entered the price, but if you have put in any strange, well, not strange, but okay, so one of the problems that we kind of find is that in Latin America, for example, they don't use commas as thousand separators, they use dots. So if you do something like that, you'll find that you'll get an error. So it should be
No,
commas.
I just put the, if it was 100, I just put 100 and it fill in the, when I clicked off, it fill in the numbers itself.
Okay. Do you want to share your screen and let's have a look? Let me just stop sharing. So you want to pop your template up, Sharon, and maybe we can all have a look at it.
Can you see it?
Yeah, quantity 25. Oh, you haven't got a unit volume and a unit weight there. You need to put something in there.
Okay.
Okay. In the interest of time, I think we'll push on. If anyone does have problems or issues, though, then by all means reach out to Kevin or myself or John Paul, and we are happy to do bilateral sessions and on Zoom and go through things with you. But okay, so we'll assume that you are comfortable with this process. So as Anne has already leapt ahead, then the next phase would be we decide we're going to start moving our items around. So you can create one or more service requests to start transferring those items that you uploaded. And as you recall, you need to start with your from warehouse and your from organization, and that will enable the stock entry button, and you can start picking the items that you had on your SRF. Sorry, on your upload. So what I'd suggest you do is to put your capital item on one SRF and your other items on a second SRF. But you don't have to do that. You could put it all on one SRF if you so desire. It doesn't really make any difference. It's really just a practice. So let's call that done at 10:15. So you've got 10 minutes to run through a couple of SRFs. Hey, Ann, go ahead with the question you've got.
There's two in the select stock little pop up. There's two places where you can put quantity. You've got a quantity box that you can edit. You can see available quantity, which is great, and then you can pick part or all of that, I suppose, in that first quantity box. But then I'm a little bit confused. Sorry, I forgot I should review last week's notes, I guess. But then you've got a ship quantity. So what would be the difference between the quantity, QTY, and the ship quantity? What? And yeah, and it had pallet, but I changed package. Sorry, this is a really dumb question. You know,
Let me bring up something so that we can. Well, I suppose I should have actually done yours, right? But let's pop this one up, and you can actually see what. For those of you who are want to follow along the process, then this is kind of what we're following through. Okay, so now my stock is enabled.
select stock. Yeah, you're in the select stock.
Okay, so I go find my, what do we have? We had a loader, right?
I think it would be a lot easier to be shipping around the stock that you uploaded, because if you typed it into that into the template yourself, you would understand a whole lot better what exactly you're talking about, wouldn't you? But
well, yeah, that's actually that's the cornerstone of the exercise, is that by making by making my item glaringly unlikely, because, for example, WFP doesn't move front-end loaders. They're a capital piece of equipment moved by serious construction entities, and we have no business owning or operating a 50-ton front-end loader. So it's by putting it up here, as you can, I think everyone can see my screen, can they? Am I sharing? Can everyone see my screen?
yeah,
Okay. All right. So by making it glaringly unlikely, I can find it relatively easily, and I can see that it has been uploaded. And then that gives me the ability to identify it from my original upload and say, yep, that's the one I'm fooling around with. This is the one I'm going to move. So what was your question about? So you can see that a couple of these columns might be a little confusing. So the unavailable quantity means that there may be items that are already held on SRFs. So in principle, your inventory might be 10, but 2 might already be committed to another SRF. So 2 would show as unavailable, and that would leave you a balance available to commit of 8. So I can put my 1 in there. And okay, so it's just loose. And my ship quantity is just 1. Is that what you're asking me, or?
well, that's your ship quantity, the first quantity you put in, and then the ship quantity. Why would they not always be the same? I'm not sure how that would work.
Oh, because things will get broken up. But remember that this is a service request. It's not necessarily what the dispatcher will do, because the dispatcher has the ultimate decision on how they will break things down. So your units might be, for instance, 6 packs of water or bottles of water, but your actual shipping units will be pallets or cartons or something like that. Okay, so you have two units. One is the lowest unit that you want to account for in the system, and the other is what you normally move them around in, or what you are moving them or requesting to move them around.
Well, okay, if you said, say for example, one of these that has 14 available, if you said the quantity is 7, but you only want to ship 1, what happens to the other 6? I think they would be unavailable. The whole 7 would be unavailable, but the 6 that you them?
So they would stay available.
They would?
Yeah.
So as long as okay, so it's the ship quantity that comes out of the available quantity, not.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
understand
well,
the
it's this is the quantity that you commit, but this is the shipping quantity. How do they come? So if you want to commit 100 bottles of water, but actually it all comes in cases of 10, and you're going to have them on 2 pallets, then that's the way it would work. So one is for accounting purposes and one is for transport management purposes, really.
Okay, so that ship unit and ship quantity goes together. So you might have 8 of
Yes.
something, and they're in a package of 4. So you've got two
Yes.
packages of 4.
No,
quantity-
packages is a bad idea to use because that's a bad analogy, and a package for the sake of what we're doing, we want to keep that very specific, that it's a collection of something that we want to track. The technical term is a collie, but nobody really outside of very specialized supply chain people use that term. So that's why we've chosen package. But yes, the principle is correct. So typically we would normally move things either loose or on a pallet or in a box.
Okay, I think I understand. Thanks.
Okay. So if you look here at what comes out is that my actual quantity is 1. I'm going to ship it as 1, and I'm going to ship it loose because there's no way I can put a box around a 6 cubic meter front end loader. Now, if I'm not happy with that, I can of course delete it and then go back and select something else or reselect. But for the purposes of this part of the exercise, then I'm happy with this. So I'm going to show you something else, is that I have no dates put in here. Yeah. Okay, so it's done it.
Hi, Jeff. There's a
Yep. Can I
query
just
from
stop for a second there? I've got a gardener outside. I'm just going to tell him to turn the weed whacker off.
Oh, okay, then you come back. I'll raise the question, Rashi.
You want to go ahead with your question in the meantime? See if I can help you out.
Oh, hi, John Paul. Right. Rashid has a question in the chat. He said he had a disconnect on his end and he's having trouble getting his document uploaded. So he's wondering if he lacked the necessary permissions.
to load. What profile?
This is Rashid O'Neill from DEM.
Right. Yeah.
His query is in the chat.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm back.
So Jeff, the concern is from Rashid from DEM.
Yeah.
He's entered in the chat that he just had a disconnect and he's having trouble to get his document to upload. So he wants to know if he lacks the permissions.
I don't know.
Is upload stock, sorry.
Okay, have you checked to see if he has permissions?
So you came back on as soon as I was about to jump.
All right, okay. All right, so and JP, can you keep your eyes open for anyone who's having issues with their permissions and deal with it in the background, please? Okay, anyone else? All right, so we're at 10:18, so we'll move along a little bit. Okay. So as operators, if you now log into the, if you navigate to the emergency list logistics interface, this is the first part of it. And you recall from what Kevin showed you the other day is that it follows a flow, which is basically that someone has to make a request. That request then has to be approved. Once it's approved, it passes to the warehouse to start their work. They put the items pick the items, put them into packages, and assign them based on the transportation resources they have available, and they documents and the label going out. It goes out, and then it's received, and that completes the chain of movement from point A to point B. So we are now at the point where we have got SRFs in the system, and we are putting on our operator hats, and we're saying, right, which ones do we want to approve and which ones do we not want to approve? So at its simplest, approving just means clicking the approved button, but that's fraught with danger. So the responsible thing to do is to actually inspect the item first. So you can either click on the edit button or you can click on the view button. I tend to click dangerously, he says, on the edit button just to have a look and then see whether stuff needs to be adjusted or moved around. And just going back, the person who has the approval authority has got a lot of power here, because they can simply delete the request, which means it's gone. And if there is something critical that was supposed to be sent, then that's a bit of a problem. Typically, you would only delete something if you can see two clear duplicates. That's the most likely scenario for doing that. And what happens is there tends to be cases where there's a bit of a breakdown in communication between who in an organization is making a request, and they both submit the same SRF, and then things get a little confusing, and there's a bit of to and fro in email, and someone decides, okay, we'll take one out. It's not normally an operator's decision to make. The other thing is that if there is information in there that makes no sense at all, or is just too confusing, then the operator has the power to send back a message to the original requester saying, hey, we need to figure this out. This doesn't make sense. Or it may just be that the request can't be honored. So the user might have requested the movement of a container load of, I don't know, baby food, for example, and there's just no space. So in that case, they would send a return message saying, look, we're sorry, we can't move this at the dates you request, or we can't store it at the dates you request. Please adjust your dates to this, or please adjust something else to this. And you can send that, and then what will happen is a link will reopen for the user where they're able to get back into that original SRF. And that's an unusual sort of scenario, because normally once a SRF is submitted, the user can't get back into it and adjust it. So this is an exceptional case where the operator or the approver has figured out that there is a problem, and they have allowed the original requester to go back in and fix it up. Or the quickest thing to do, and again, it depends on the state of the emergency or the state of the operation. A operator also has the ability to just simply get in there and make changes themselves based on experience, knowledge of the items in the warehouse, and help the user, the original requester, out a little bit. That does happen, particularly with unsolicited goods that are being pushed around, but typically that's not desirable behavior, because really you're making choices that perhaps the original requester didn't want done. So it's always better to do that in consultation. But anyway, so for those of you who have successfully created your SRF, then the principle, the method of approving is pretty much as simple as clicking the approve button, and it's done. So anyone who has done an SRF, Chanel, Edmund, Anne, Sharon, feel free to go ahead and approve your SRF.
I'm really sorry, Jeff. How did you get to that screen you're on?
So this is, if you go to the main menu and open the emergency logistics item, it will open up this pane.
Jeff, I don't have the approve option. I guess someone needs to approve for me.
Okay, that's possibly because this is a super operator responsibility. Okay, that's fine. I can go ahead and do that for all of you. Ah, very good. This is an excellent thing to do, by the way, is not so much this particular document, but it is very good to upload. So what happens is typically a request or an approval is given in writing or on a note or on a text message or something like that. So it's useful to just take a screenshot of it, save it as a PDF or as an image, and upload it. And then what happens is you've got a supporting document to go along with your approval. So actually the reason you can't approve it is because there is one level above operator, which is super operator, and that's reserved for the head of operations or the people sitting in the EOC who make the final decision on the approval. But in this case, anyone with administrator rights or above, or actually super operator rights and above, can do this. So anyway, we'll go ahead and do it for everyone. As you can see, there's actually not much to the process. So while it was part of the exercise, it doesn't matter that I'm doing it. Okay, so those are approved. And I'll leave you to follow on to the next part, which was to make your consignments and your packages. If everyone remembers how to do that, I'll start walking through one so that everyone can see it. So we've just completed the approve the SRFs, no requirement for deletes or amendments. And so now we're up to creating the consignments and the packages that go inside them. So I'll walk you through this again with the one that I just did, which is an easy one, and then I'll show you some variations a little bit later. So where are we? So mine is, you can see that mine is SRF 1, well, the last 3 digits are 170, created by me. That's the date that I approved it, and it's going from WFP to CDEMA. So you, right in front of you, without having to dig into the SRF itself, you've got some visual cues that kind of help you along the way and show you where you are in the process. Okay, so the next part, dealing with the one I just created. So we've got, there's mine there, and I can validate that. There's my loader, the one I want to move. There's one. Right. So now we change hats yet again. So basically, once it's gone from approval, it now falls squarely in the domain of the warehouse management team or the supply management team. So this is completely out of the hands of the original requester or on the ground requester, unless of course you're the administrator and you're doing the whole process as an expedient. But typically, this would now step into the realm of the supply chain management team. So I'm putting on my warehouse manager's hat and I'm saying, right, okay, I need to move this item. So I've selected, and right away my package button is activated. And as we've said, package for our intents and purposes is a generic term. It represents essentially a set of one or more items. And the idea is that it is the lowest unit, if you like, that the lowest collection that we will want to track. So I'm going to create that, and you can see I only have one item and there is only a quantity of 1, so I can't really do much more than pick the one. So yep, I've got my default of 1, happy with that. Go ahead and create my package. So now the system has stepped on to packages, and by default, the newest will be at the top, but verify that it is your package. It's created by me. It's going from WFP to CDEMA. There's the original SRF number. Validate that it's 170. I'm happy with that. You do have the possibility of bailing out at this point, but once you've committed to this, you're kind of committed. So the next phase is to do a transportation document. We're only moving by road, so, and we're using our own means of transport, so I don't need a packing list, and I don't need to use anything from WFP. Just a regular delivery note will be perfectly acceptable. So I generate my delivery note, and it should be evident to all of you that the delivery note looks surprisingly like the SRF, and that is exactly right. The idea is to maintain that flow of documents so that users get familiar with what they're seeing, which isn't always the case with commercial documents. So the idea is that the familiarity will make the system easier to use, and users will get used to looking for things in certain places, which should speed up the process and hopefully reduce some of the errors. So you can see that all is good. The only thing that I need to put in there now that is essential is a date. So we'll just put today's date in there. It's going from the dispatch point as the warehouse. I don't need my title. I'm not using a carrier agent, and this field remains for Sorry, I don't need to fill in actually, I lie. A carrier agent is essential. So what should we call it? This is actually an essential part of the tracking and tracing process when there is no online system available, which you questioned about the other day. So this is where we devolve back to a paper-based system. So it's essential to have the contacts and particularly the registration number of whatever vehicle it is that's being used. Oops. Okay, so that's our fictitious reference number, and that's it. So I put on a date, and so then I can go ahead and submit my delivery note. And it's done. All right, so you can see that my delivery note has been created. So before we dive into this part, for those of you that have followed along and have got SRFs in the system, once you hit the consignment level, the system falls back down to operator level, because at the warehouses, the requirement is for operators, not super operators. So you should, in fact, now be able to see all of your SRFs and complete those for those of you who started the process. So I think there's Anne and Sharon and a couple of others. So feel free, go ahead and see how you go with committing those onto packages and or one package, and see how you go with that. Actually, maybe I should probably, yeah, I'll leave you to go ahead and do some experimenting, and I'll create a second SRF to show you the kit thing in the interim. So I'll stop sharing while I get that set up, and then I'll come back on. And it's 10:34 now, so let's go for, I don't know, maybe 10:50, and see how we go with that. So I've got a question from Anne, which says, should each form include a title, e.g. delivery note? Yes, the form does automatically have that at the top of it. So it'll say what it is. A delivery note says delivery note, and then it'll be given a delivery note number.
Jeff?
Yep, go ahead, Ann.
If I go into one of these screens, it only has a submit button, not a cancel button. And I want to get out. What I've been doing is just picking another menu option that gets me out of that screen. Is that a really bad thing to do?
I'm not sure where you are in the process, but
Well, say I clicked to edit the delivery note, and I didn't want to change it. I didn't want to submit it because I didn't want to change it. So I just clicked on another menu option like stock, and it got me out of that screen.
oh, I see. All right. Yeah, no problem. No, that's fine. No, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. Yeah, that's no problem with doing that at all.
Why is there no cancel button?
That's probably a good question. So when you say cancel, all you're wanting to do was to close the screen. Is that right?
Yeah, I didn't want to submit it. I didn't really have anything to change. It was okay.
Oh, I see. All right. Yes, we haven't enabled that anywhere, actually. That's something we can think about doing. Yeah, I would typically just go back, or as you say, go to bail out and go to another menu item. But yes, we could put a cancel button in, no problem. Okay, and I can see that everyone's managed to do a delivery note. So fantastic. All right, so leaping ahead. All right, so let's just go back to
Jeff.
Yep.
Yeah. Rhonda is registered as a super user. She's not getting the option to upload.
Okay, all right. So feel free to go ahead and change anyone who's on there, who's on the list of participants up to an operator. Yeah, I think it's because we changed everyone based on a script, but the hosts are not appearing. So, yeah. All right, just for the purposes of following up on some of the earlier discussion about kits. So what we've done here is we're saying, okay, we're at our central warehouse and we want to break items down into kits before we ever send them. So on this SRF, you can see that what we've done is we've got totals of items that are available, and they're a nice even match. Now, that's not necessarily a requirement. It is entirely possible to have kits made up of mismatched items. So if you only have, for instance, 8 packets of salt or something, it is entirely possible that 2 of the kits would be deficient in salt, or maybe 1 has an extra bag of rice or something like that. There's no hard and fast rule with this. The idea is to just show you why a package is a collection, and a collection can be a selection of items that comprise a kit, a food kit, because that's an item that's typically talked about by the victim assistance people, and also by the needs assessment people. So we're going to commit all of it. And the way we do that is, you can see that I've selected multiple line items to put into a package. You don't have to select them all. You can just select 2 out of the items. For instance, I could leave oil off it altogether, and when I go to package, you can see I don't have all of them there. And that's not what I want to do. I want to create a composite kit, so I can just bail out and reselect everything. So now when I go to create my kit, I have the option of doing this. So instead of committing 10, I can commit 1, 1, and 1. And then I can create that package. So you can see that I've got one package created for under SRF 1175. Now I know that I have a balance available, so I can just go back and do that until I no longer have items available. So you can see that I started with 10 on my SRF, but actually the available quantity is only 9 because I've committed the others onto a package. So I can go through and I can repeat that process as many times as I want. And away I go again. So now we've got 2 unique packages created. So they are our 2 unique collections and they're both identical. So we'll do one more. And we'll say, right, okay, we have not completed the total that's on that SRF, but we only have room in the pickup to send 3 of these kits. So we're going to commit these on one delivery note. And remember that a delivery note is, it is assigned to a unique means of transport, a unique serial number, whether that's a ship number, a container number, well, it wouldn't be a ship actually, but a truck or even a mule, if you like. So now we've got our 3 packages. So for the purposes of this exercise, we'll commit them all onto, actually we won't, we'll just commit 2 onto one delivery note. So we're going to commit 2 onto one delivery note. And we'll generate our delivery note. So now you can see that we've got our line items, but they're all one package. So we've got 1763, 1763, 1763, and then we've got a second one, which is 1764. They all relate to the original SRF, but they're all traceable. So now when we go ahead and commit those to, we better use that rat bag again. It's the only one available. And we will submit. So following through on that, now underneath our delivery note, you can see that we've actually got the two packages stuck in there, and we can see what's in each package if we want to. And there are some other things that we can also do with the package. So one of the things that we can do is we can print a label for it. And this is where you saw the print label function that we had last time. You can either use one of the specialized label printers to generate a label, or if you have limited means available, then any inkjet or dot matrix, or well, not dot matrix, but any inkjet or laserjet printer that can sustain labels would work. You can get package labels. We use those a lot in the Bahamas. Or you can just simply use an A4 page and print them out and stick them on your boxes. And that's what we used last year at the wharf. So you can just print A4 sheets out and record them and go from there. It's the same deal. just as a sort of slight aside, it's a very easy thing to do to get plastic sleeves. They come in boxes of several hundred. You can just stick a plastic sleeve with some spray glue on the side of a package and just slide an A4 piece of paper with the label in, and it works just as well as using a high-tech label printed out on a label printer. Of course, the thermal resolution on these is on the label printers is very good, so that's why we use them. And at that point, this is perfectly readable. So for those of you that have downloaded the APK and installed it on your Android device, you can literally scan this now, and you'll be able to do the receiving for your item. For those of you who don't have that capacity, then there is always the capacity to do manual receiving using this button here. The difference is actually, if you're doing the scanning manually off the app, then you are already logged in, and the system understands that you are in the field and will take your GPS coordinates and also assign it to it. So those are some of the things you can do. The other things that you can do, and we haven't really gone into this too much because this is a feature we're sort of still working on at the moment, is this is a log, and it's blank because we haven't done anything with it. But if you are familiar with UPS or DHL or any of the big courier companies, then they have a scanning system where if an item goes through multiple points, then you're able to scan as you go and record inwards and outwards events. So it doesn't apply so much in single island or single location responses, because really you're just going from point A to point B. But if you were to think about some of the other states, then there are quite big waterways between some of them. If you take, for instance, St. Vincent, there are multiple islands in the chain. There are multiple islands in the Bahamas. And so if you were, say, in the Bahamas, as we were, then it's quite feasible to have someone with an Android phone at the wharf, and they're able to scan it at the wharf so that there is a sort of a time log of items coming in and going out. So you would have the ability to see inwards on the package and outwards on the package. And if you've downloaded the app, you'll see how that's done, because there will be two buttons enabled which show inwards and outwards. So instead of scanning as a receiving process, you're scanning in and scanning out. And I can't really show you that on the system. There is a way, but it's a little cumbersome and complicated. So I'll leave that for the administration side, or maybe we'll make a separate little video on that for a later date. But anyway, that's what happens when scanning is done through this, and the final one will be received. The other type of scanning that's available is not done at package level. It could be done at package level, but typically it's done at the delivery note level. So if we just go back up, then you'll see here we have the ability to assign an active tracking device, which is what Kevin talked about on Monday. So in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to associate our delivery note with one of the actual active trackers. And this presumes that you have already decided you're going to actively track something, and you're going to associate a tracker, which means that you get into the tracking interface, you turn the tracking device on, and you set its parameters up, how many times it's going to tell you where it is, whether it's going to tell you whether it's exceeded a temperature or dropped below a temperature, whether the doors have been opened, particularly for containers and things like that. So that's how you do it. And we've only got the two trackers active in the system. So if we were to choose let's just go with the Belize one, then what that means is basically everywhere the tracker goes is effectively where that item now is, literally, because it's been associated with it. which sort of enables a little bit of track and trace for anyone who wants to follow the live progress of their items. Now, that's typically not really done in an emergency, unless it's a vital piece of equipment or something like, perhaps if we were moving COVID-19 vaccines, for example, or something that's mission critical and time sensitive and temperature sensitive, we would go to these levels, but normally we wouldn't really bother. It's no one has the time to be sitting there constantly tracking where everything is every 10 minutes. So normally we would set our trackers to report to us once a day. And that would really be all you need to check in, unless you, as I said, unless you have mission critical items to do that. So those are just a couple of little features that we didn't cover so much in the training, but they are there and they are available. They are more use to people post-exercise who want to do forensic activities to check that something did actually arrive, or when something's gone missing, and they can start the trace going and say, well, yes, this arrived at this point at this time. So we know it made it to the wharf at least. We lost it somewhere on the other side. That means it's probably still on the ship, or it got off at a other destination, and we start our narrowing down from there. So those are just a couple of other little features on that one. The delivery note itself, I just wanted to show you one little thing with the delivery note that perhaps wasn't so obvious. Okay, so the delivery note, as you see it, is set up without any grids or the rest. The purpose of that is to make the printing quicker using dot matrix printers, which we have to go with the system because they enable multi-form printing, and those forms have got, they're self-carboning. So where you need people to sign off on something, then they can just sign it off directly, and it will print on all of the copies that are sent out. So the process is typically the top copy would be pulled off and retained by the dispatching warehouse. Several other copies would go with the carrier. One he keeps for his file purposes. Then one is kept with the person doing the final receiving. And you can see that the signatures decrease as you process. And what happens is, once this is signed off, you've got 2 points of return. So the person doing the receiving can inform the dispatching warehouse that yes, it's arrived. And this guy, the carrier, also has to present a copy signed by this guy accepting the goods before he gets paid. So it's kind of the traditional way that a delivery note system works. And there is no difference in the way that things happen currently. Delivery notes work the same way. If you get your stuff on DHL, you still have to sign it. It's just that this system is done automatically. And it's the same way that the app allows you to do it automatically. And then what happens is that information is all fed back into the system in real time. Whereas the paper documents, there is always going to be a lag in the time it takes for either one of these parties to return the forms and for someone to collate them and to check them and do the receiving of them. So what's the point of that? Well, the point is that, okay, if you are sitting in the control room as an operator or an administrator, then you don't have eyes on these documents and this signature for quite some time. So what happens is the delivery note, my delivery note will remain open until such time as it's signed off. That's not the delivery note I wanted. Where's the other one? What was it? That's the one I want, I think. Okay, so it's telling me it's under delivery. I haven't scanned it using the app. So as a administrator or someone sitting in the control tower, if you like, the control center, you can manually do the receiving on behalf of someone if you trust that they have actually received it. So if you are happy with WhatsApp or text messages or emails, then that would be useful as a alternative that you could use to support that the job actually did get done. And so the final part of closing out, as was also covered the other day, is you can either say that, yes, we accept it as usable, or it's damaged beyond use. And there was a question the other day about, can we still use that item? If you basically accept it as usable, even though it's damaged, then that's fine. Those are decisions that yourselves would have to make as the recipients of the items. Is it fit for purpose or is it not? That's really the two choices. And there's one more if it's actually missing, because sometimes missing items do turn up subsequently. So that's why there is a missing column there. But anyway, so in our case, we would select one and then we would just submit. And because we are logged in, we don't need to manually fill this in. And it's the same with the application. So all of this information is automatically captured by the system. And we are done. So that is the complete flow from warehouse A to warehouse B and the transfer of stock. So now the item will no longer appear inside the WFP warehouse. It'll appear in the CDEMA stock. And I'll show you that in a second. But before we go there, what I want to also show you is that if you don't have a dot matrix printer at hand, this is a macro file. Okay, so that you can see that because it's an XLSM. If you need to print using a dot matrix, a laserjet or an inkjet printer, then you can get into the macros side of things. And I won't go into how you run macros. That's kind of a little beyond scope, but there is a macro built into it. If you click this and run it, then instead of printing just the one copy, Excel will force your printer to produce, I think, five copies, each which is color coded, and they're color coded like this. So what will happen is at the bottom of each copy, there'll be a different color depending on what it's for. So there's a bit of a visual cue there, and there's also a note saying who's should get what. Okay, so I just thought I'd mention that the system, again, is designed to degrade gracefully and cover a multitude of likely scenarios. We fully realize that you may not have a dot matrix printer at hand at the start of an emergency, or that you run out of paper, and that dot matrix paper is not the easiest thing to come by. So there are alternatives available to you. I just wanted to mention that and how you get there. And the other one was we were just going to do a bit of verification on our stock. So if we just check our stock, so let's check what we've got in WFP's warehouse. And you can see no loader. So the loader is still listed, but it's not in WFP's warehouse. So let's change our warehouse and we'll go to CDEMA warehouse. And voila, great success. So we've succeeded in transferring and getting the item into the system and then in moving it from point A to point B. So we've covered all of the functions that a user would typically need to do, and an operator as well. So for those of you who have generated your delivery notes, then by all means feel free to complete the process, whether you do it in the app. I'd be interested to see if anyone can do it in the app, or if not, then by all means just go ahead and do it manually as wearing the hat of the operator in the emergency operating center. And while we're on it, you'll be able to see one last thing is that once the item has been received, the transaction is completed and there's no possibility to back out of it. Logically, of course, but you can no longer do anything with this. You can't edit it, you can't change it, it's done. So if you want to reverse the transaction or there's some sort of problem with it, that's actually not a problem. All you do is you just reverse the transaction. So you raise a new SRF, you move it back to where it needed to come from. And it's the same deal with loans. So you're basically using a system that accounts for, it's a lightweight system, but it does give you visibility and accountability on what you're moving and where you're moving it to. So there you go. Over to you for the people who have got system items. So Edmund, Anne, Chanel, Sharon, feel free to do your final receiving, which, as you know, you find your package and do the receiving on it. So I'll give you, I don't know, let's say till 1:15, and then we'll wrap up. If anyone has any further questions, then obviously feel free to ask or put something in the chat. We'll respond to it. you able to share? Or are you doing it on the app? Okay, if you want to share your screen, we might be able to see what's going on. Okay. All right. So, yeah, perhaps I didn't explain that very, very well. So you see in column 20 over on the far left, yeah, so that's the actual quantity that you have sent, but you have sent it as a collection of one package. So what needs to happen is all of those three columns in the accepted quantity, damaged quantity, and missing quantity, they need to sum to the quantity that's in the first column, column number 20. Yeah. So what happens here is, just before you go ahead and do that, you got a good example there. It is possible, it is entirely possible, for instance, for you've got rice there. You might say, okay, well, I've accepted 8, one's damaged and one's just completely missing. And that does happen, you know, when very often you see pickups coming in and, you know, they're down on the axles and things are not very well secured. And so what happens is not everything arrives because it literally falls off the side of the truck. There's no, you know, it's not been misappropriated. It's just that things get stacked so high on some of these vehicles, and there's a tendency for, particularly for sacks of rice or sacks, to get slipped or to be over pressurized, and then things pop out. But anyway, so there you go. You should be able to submit that now. Great.
That quantity got me again, eh?
Well, if you think about it on a different light, to be fair, that's the first one you've ever done, and you got through it just fine with literally just a couple of hours of explanation. So I take that as a positive, really. How's everyone else going? Okay, looking pretty good. Edmonds is done, Anne's done, Chanel's done. How are you going, Sharon? You having problems, or is it okay? Might be ducked away.
Yes, we're having a problem. What's the next step? Go again. Next step after you have done the consignment.
You're already right up to the delivery, so all you need to do is the receiving. Hang on, let me go back to sharing my screen. So you're way past here. You've already done the delivery note, so you're up to you just need to do the receiving, which is here. So if you pop that one open, what you'll see is these flashing columns here. So you just have to decide whether you are happy with what you receive, you're not happy with what you received. In other words, it's not fit for purpose, or that it's just completely missing, it never turned up. And here are the quantities that you need to balance in there. So it's no good putting one in here and then putting another one in one of the other columns, because they must sum to whatever the value is in the first column. So as you say, and there's no cancel button, I just go back. We will consider that though. Okay, we're running very close to being out of time. For those who haven't completed the exercise or would like access to the exercise, then I'm pretty sure that this video will be up on the Ministry of Labour site fairly shortly. But also there is the exercise stored inside the library itself, along with, which is here, along with the APK for those of you who have the access to an Android device, whether that's a smartphone or a tablet. It doesn't really matter as long as they're internet enabled. And you can find that here. Other than that, I hope that you are at least familiar with some of the issues that we face, both practically and with system design and how we interact with the system. Some of the opportunities and the quite frankly big problems that we face. Again, the system is designed as a lightweight emergency deployment system, but that doesn't mean that the users pitch up on the operational field untrained. The idea is that you take a lightweight system into the field with you that you already know better than the back of your own hand, so that you've got a tool that you can immediately deploy with confidence, knowing that you're going to be able to be effective and efficient in a minimum amount of time. So that's what this is. That's what this is targeted at. And people, perhaps there's been a bit of confusion in amongst other groups, particularly because it was deployed in St. Vincent, that it's something that you pick up and learn as you go on the job. Well, it doesn't really work. The idea is that teams that go into the ground already have the system familiarized, they're already familiar with the system and already understand how to work all the parts of it, so that it cuts down on that stress of having to try and learn. The idea is you hit the ground and you're effective because you've got the tools of the trade at your fingertips, and they're tools that you know very well. And so that kind of concludes this part of the exercise. I hope you've seen that it's a relatively straightforward system to use, and for those of you who sort of watch me click and flick, it's relatively fast to use if you had a little bit of time up using it. So I'd like to thank you all for your time, and I hope that it's been of use to you and will serve you well in the coming months, years. And we are available anytime for anyone who would like to review, go over anything that we've covered here. And with that, I will pass back to Kevin, and that is excellent news, Sharon. So fantastic. So there you go. I think that's validation that we've taken yourselves who had no experience with, or relatively limited experience with, logistics systems just 2 short weeks ago, to being able to follow through the entire process and understand the documentation and the checks and balances required to make the system work. So I will pass back to Kevin for closing questions and remarks. again, thank you all.
Hi, yes. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, John Paul, and WFP team for a sterling practical session there. I'm glad that participants were able to really get into it and get into the nitty-gritty and be able to use the system on their own accord, troubleshoot, see difficulties, see challenges, overcome challenges, and inputting data and going through the entire chain process that I always reiterate within the presentation. So good job, guys. I see where you all would be able to know more about the system and be able to apply it within your respective agencies, as I think that each of you on the call will benefit from having access to a system that can help with basic inventorying and distribution of supplies to beneficiaries, because that's the job that we are in. When things happen, that's what we are here to do. Okay, so that was the last item on the agenda. With respect to the sessions, again, I will do a quick wrap up and thank you for your attendance. You know that we did the essential sessions, we ran through the input of data, we looked at the different capacities, the assessments, the capabilities, how you can put data and how you can upload warehouses, ports, stock, and have that list of capacities that will enable any disaster management practitioner on the field to know what is out there and how we can actually use these nodes to help us in our relief management processes. So good work. What I would do, I will, before I officially wrap up, I'll open the floor to anyone who has any comments about the system or any comments about what we did. I'll open the floor before I wrap up. So the floor is open to anyone. Okay, I don't see anyone. So what I would do, I would just state that we're here and we're available for questioning myself or the WFP team. And what we will do, we will discuss with Ms. Farley, and the final administration or administrative sessions we will hold and we would orchestrate next year, most likely beginning of February, around there, those administrative sessions, because we know we did the essential sessions, the extended sessions, and now the administrative sessions. So that's the next port of call, to see, for the process. So on behalf of the CDEMA coordinating unit, the ED, I'd like to thank everyone for attending this CLS training in Barbados. It's a big part of our logistics program, and we'd like to also thank WFP for their continual support in this program rollout. And I would hand the mic over on to Ms. Farley in a bit, but from behalf of the CDEMA staff, CU, everyone associated with the agency, thank you for your attendance, and we look forward to future opportunities to interact with you all. And we hope that we would never need to put what we did in practice, because it will mean that Barbados will be impacted, but you always need to plan, and this is a big part of planning. So thank you all, and I will pass you on over to Ms. Rhonda Farley. Rhonda?
Thank you, Kevin. And I just want to say thank you to CDEMA for accepting the invitation from the ministry when we reached out for this training. And Kevin, really, for all of your hard work, and Jeff and his team also, from the planning meetings up to the execution of the workshop. It has been very detailed. I'm a little behind, but I will try to make sure that I can go through the entire process from start to finish. And also I want to say thank you for the participants for your interest and the commitment to attending. We had some apologies, so just let me say from DEM, those came in later, they weren't able to join us today. But they said, thank you very much for the training. It was very educational and productive for them. But not DEM, sorry, Barbados Red Cross. We have DEM here. Barbados Red Cross. And to all the third sector organizations and the other governmental organizations that are here, thank you all very much for participating. Hopefully, Kevin, I agree with you. Hopefully we won't have to experience anything major, but going forward, I know that this will make our task so much easier, because really this year, coming from a position of not knowing from within the ministry and within the ministry, because the organizations that are very much involved, they would have an idea. But coming from our position of not knowing, it is good to be able now to have this information and the training available for the organizations. And going forward, we know then that persons would know what they have to do in terms of inputting the information. It will make the task a whole lot easier when we have to, if we have to rely on the Barbados Red Cross or Salvation Army and so on again. So thank you all very much for this very important training. And Kevin, as you said, we would touch base in terms of the final aspect of the training. So I just want to wish everyone all the best, stay safe, all the best for the Christmas holidays. May it be an enjoyable and happy one, joyous. And all the best for the new year 2022. So thank you, and thank you for joining us. And that's it basically from me. Thank you all very much. Jeff, Kevin, all of our participants, those who are here, those who could not be here, thank you. We will continue to reach out and be collaborative. Well, that is our aim, to partner with as many persons as we can. So thank you.
Thanks to all the hosts as well, and have a blessed Christmas season to all.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And
you.
just to state also before I go, that it's important that we all know each other, because when something happens, we rely on each other for response. So it's good that you have this relationship with each other if something were to happen. Over. That's it for me. Bye.
Yes, I agree, Kevin. Partnerships are very important. So we have a list of persons who are trained and who can use in the system, so we know who we can call on. But thank you all very much. Enjoy the remainder of the day. And hopefully sometime next year we'll be able to meet in person. Get away from Zoom.
That's right.
Get away from Zoom. Thank you, John, Chanel, Sina, Jeff, and yes. Thank you all. Yes, Edmund. Thank you, Kira. Jeff, I don't quite understand that. One as a goodbye. Learning a new language. It's gone already. Bye, Jamal. Mhm.